Napa, pura calidad.
Dale más vida a tu carro con Napa. Aceite convencional para motor Pennzoil por solo $3.49 el cuarto. Además ahorras $10 por par, llevándote los limpiaparabrisas Bosch Evolution Beam. Lógralo con Napa, pura calidad.
Oferta válida hasta el 28 de febrero. Precio general en los diferentes estados. El precio no incluye impuestos aplicables ni cargos por reciclaje. Ver tienda para detalles.
Napa, pura calidad.
There's something outside.
What is that?
Radio. Good Sunday evening, Monster X listeners. This is your host, Gunnar Monson, calling in from the beautiful Oregon coast. It's been a little wet. Did a little bit of squatching yesterday, at least out looking in the woods. Found an interesting location that we'll take advantage of this summer, spring and summer. But didn't find anything squatchy at the moment. The area that I was looking at does have a history of reports, so I'm excited about that. And this is kind of off the beaten path where we went yesterday. Did run into a little bit of snow up in the higher elevations. Was coming down pretty good, but I'm sure not as much as other areas of the country. With me today is my good friend and Washingtonian, Mr. Shane Hardcore Corson. Shane, how are you?
I like your new area that you discovered. We were just talking off air about this area, and I'm looking forward to getting down there and checking it out because it does have a lot of history. So it's going to be, I think it's going to be an interesting summer. It looks like we're getting pretty busy here.
Well, you have recently relocated from the great state of Oregon to Washington. How is that going? Have you been out looking up there yet?
I have. I've been so slowly settling in. I'm pretty familiar with Washington and different areas I live in now. And fortunately, I'm closer to some other fellow researchers in Derek Randalls and James Millian and a few others. So we're getting out here and there. This weekend, we were actually up at the Lake Quinault Lodge, where the Olympic Project was revealing a showcase of our finds and for the Lake Quinault Lodge. We have a display up there now, a permanent display where our stuff's on display, and we're going to be working actively with the lodge in the future with presentations and stuff. There's that area, the Ocean Shores area has got a huge Sasquatch activity. Yeah, you can't go anywhere around that area and not see something Sasquatch related or Bigfoot related. And it's a real honor to work with the lodge. We also had Cliff Barrickman up there with us. He was, our good friend Cliff Barrickman. He was along with us to help along with the unveiling of this showcase. And so we had a great weekend up there. We've made a lot of new friends. And we look forward to working with the Lake Quinault Lodge. Gunnar, you got to get up there and check that out. I know you're a pretty busy guy, but it's quite a really neat-looking showcase.
Well, that's really cool because now Lake Quinault this is where the Johnny Manson has the Sasquatch Summit.
No, that's the casino.
Okay.
So The lodge
Gotcha.
is right along Lake Quinault, and it's further north. Amazing area. Yeah, it's a little more remote. So we did some hiking out there where Derek Randall's and some others had found impressions, I think 4 or 5 years ago in an area up there. So those are also on display at Lake Quinault. But it's a beautiful area, and it still gets a lot of Sasquatch reports up there. In fact, most of the people we talked to over the weekend don't even bat an eye when you talk about Sasquatch, and most of them believe Sasquatch is real, and a lot of them have seen Sasquatch. So it's
cool.
Really a unique opportunity for us. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's good that I'm excited. Anytime the Olympic project gets some more public exposure like that, I like when we get some scientific kind of exposure versus some of the more tabloid exposure that seems to be the way the media likes to portray the subject. But that's cool that the Olympic project and Cliff is part of the Olympic project, so that's cool that group is getting some more exposure in a positive light, which brings more positive light to the subject of Bigfoot and Sasquatch.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, our guest today has been a guest before, but we love having him back. It's Robert Robertson. Also, he likes to go by Legend Tripper. He's been interested in the subject since he was a kid, and we are excited to talk to Robert today. Good afternoon,
Hello.
Robert. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you guys doing?
Good. Shane, you doing okay?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Robert, for Monster X listeners, can you give us a little bit about your background and how you became interested in the subject of Bigfoot? And I know you have a lot of other interests, but
I've been. I always tell people the way I got into Bigfooting was, the classic story, The Legend of Boggy Creek. I went out with, when I was living in Mississippi with my parents. We went to the drive-in and went and saw it. Movie scared the crap out of me. In fact, it was a double feature. I don't even remember what the second movie was, and then my uncle started talking about it and telling stories, but I didn't like being scared of it. But then I found out there was, I started reading stuff about it, and I found out, it wasn't just necessarily about the Fouke Monster, but it was about Bigfoot. And I actually started getting really intrigued with it, and it actually became something of a hobby, just reading about it and stuff. And then, of course, that TV show In Search Of came out, and I was a big fan of that. And I've been, a fan of, cryptozoology ever since. I read, Ivan T. Sanderson books, Bernard Hevelman, and Lauren Coleman's books. And then when I retired from the military in 2003, I was actually, I had the time to actually go out and go on Bigfoot hunts. I living in Florida, so I went on a couple of BFRO trips, and then I started, going on my own. I took my family, and a couple of years ago, I hooked up with Stacy Brown, and I've been going out with his group, Sasquatch Hunters of America. So.
Oh, cool. Well, tell us a little bit about the Legend Tripper moniker. How did that develop?
Okay. The way that started out is my wife, she got into the whole ghost hunting thing. And I would go out with her, and, I really wasn't into the ghost hunting that much. I mean, I was supportive, and I went out, and I helped her set up the cameras. But I don't know if I was really much of a believer. I haven't really seen anything. But, again, for the record, I keep an open mind. But she started coming out on my Bigfoot hunts with me, and I think it was the same thing with her. She didn't really – I'm not sure she really believed, in Bigfoot and all that, but she did come out. But she didn't want to be called a Bigfoot hunter, and I didn't want to be called a ghost hunter, so we found this term Legend Tripper, and that kind of fit into the whole thing. Plus, I like to look into the UFO stuff and buried treasure and just, unexplained places and stuff. So, I started doing a couple things on it, and I noticed, an interest in it. And I wrote a book last year, published by Ventures Unlimited Press, called Legend Tripping the Ultimate Adventure, which is basically a guidebook on how to go look for Bigfoot and other cryptids, how to conduct a ghost hunt, how to go look, do a investigation on UFO and UFO landings, and to explore unexplained areas around the United States.
Yeah, the name's very it's different. I've heard you got a lot of books out there, but this Legend sounds almost like the Indiana Jones of sort of book,
Yeah. Well, I always tell everybody that I don't claim to be a cryptozoologist. I'm not a ghost hunter or paranormal investigator. I'm not a ufologist. I'm a legend tripper because I like to go. I like to go look for all that stuff. But I do have a strong passion for looking for Bigfoot and cryptids, though.
Yeah. Well, being in Florida, can you just talk about some of your work that you've done down in Florida? I've been to Florida. I haven't been all around Florida, but can you just talk a little bit about your work in Florida and why would a Sasquatch be in Florida? Possibly.
Well, here in Florida, of course, it's known as a skunk ape and some other name, or the swamp ape. But it's been seen here for hundreds of years. The Seminoles have legends of the large wild man of the swamps, and it's been seen virtually all over Florida, everywhere from up in the Panhandle, over down to the Everglades, even over as far as close to where NASA is. Mm-hmm. And I've like I said, I went on some BIF road trips, but the most success I've had is when I was with Stacy Brown's group, the Bigfoot Hunters. In fact, in September, we were out there, and we had broken into teams that one night, and I decided I wanted to go look at these areas with caves, and another two guys went over to this one family's house. In fact, the family was on an episode of Finding Bigfoot, where they had a handprint on their sliding glass door. But anyway, two of the gentlemen went down there, and I guess they were waiting for some other people to show up, and something struck one of the individuals' Land Rover and caused the car alarm to come on. So these two gentlemen started walking back up to the car, and all of a sudden something screamed at them from over in the woods, and one of the guys brought a light up and just could make out a huge shape as it turned around and took off. And most of these individuals are, really large, muscular guys, and not the type of, guys that get scared very easily. But that night, one of them was ready to pack up and just go home. And the other one said, I'm not going in the woods by myself anymore. Well, next morning we went out there, and we broke into groups, and Stacy and another gentleman ended up finding prints not too far from where one of the gentlemen heard, had the scream happen. And we went out there. We got the casting material, took some castings, got some awesome prints. In fact, these prints were seen in the Bigfoot Digest. So, I mean, it's quite obvious. There's been some speculation that somebody said that these animals down here are maybe smaller, down here than they are. And at some point in time, I was kind of above that agreement. But now that I'm compiling a lot more reports, it seems that the animal itself is it's the same height as the same animal that's seen over on the West Coast. Mm-hmm. And all I can speculate is that maybe people are not getting a good look at it, or they're in fact just seeing a younger version of this animal that's out there.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think a lot of times when people think of Bigfoot or skunk ape, they're always thinking of this huge, this big thing, based on the size. When in fact, if Sasquatch is real and the skunk ape is real, well, obviously there's going to be juveniles and infants and Robert, do you think that down there in Florida it is something different than, or a little bit different sort of species than Sasquatch? Or do you think, just based on your research, do you think we are dealing just with the same thing that the West Coast is dealing with, what the Northeast is dealing with?
Well, again, this is my opinion, and strictly mine own. I think we're dealing basically with the same species of animal, and the only thing different is location. And at first, if you would ask me about maybe 5 years ago, I probably would have said something different. But now that I'm seeing more footprints, and I'm looking at them compared to the footprints found over on the West Coast, I believe we were dealing with the same species of animal. It's just the only thing different is, of course, location. And, of course, this animal down here is a lot more, I'm not going to say aquatic, but it doesn't have a problem with going into the swamps and stuff.
Yeah, and that would be a difference, you know. So there could be maybe a difference in, you know, variation in color, in length of hair, living, you know, in that part of the country. But I would imagine we're probably dealing with the same entity, the same creature. Down there in Florida, you got these swampy areas. I mean, you got a lot of predators down there. You know, yes,
we do. Yes, we do.
Yeah. I mean, you got a lot of predators down there. It must be pretty dang difficult to do research in some of those areas.
Well, yeah, you got to be careful. I mean, we got you know, the alligator, and we've got panthers. But to be honest with you, we don't have as many panthers as we used to have. So in fact, it's extremely rare. And these panthers, for the most part, you know, and again, I'm going off of you know, stories I've heard, that these animals pretty much get the heck out of Dodge whenever they see humans, kind of like what the skunk ape does. And we do have bears, but the bears down here are not as big as they are up, you know, in the upper part of the United States. They are almost a little slightly bigger than a large German Shepherd. I would compare their size to. But the alligator, yeah, you have to be careful going in and around there. You know, there's a rule of thumb here in Florida. You know, every body of water has an alligator in it. So.
You guys also have to deal with snakes. I mean, now, and I would imagine hogs.
Well, every time I've been out there, I've had to deal with the snakes. Hogs are kind of rare. I do see them, and things around down here. You know, you have to worry about the mama hog if she's got her babies, because you know that she's very protective. But you know, every time I've dealt with them, I've always seen them running off and stuff. So, but don't get me wrong. Whenever I go out there, I always take bear mace with me, just as a precaution.
Yeah. No, good call. What about Florida? What are some of the hotter spots for Sasquatch sightings in Florida? I mean, any area, if you're doing research, whether it's solo or with Stacy, I mean, you have where's your go-to area, and you know, as far as you know, getting a lot of reports.
Well, the area I seem to be getting, I've had seen more positive experiences being up there, actually near Tallahassee in the Panhandle up there, near Torreya State Park. It seems every time I go up there and meet with we get a group going on, there's something happens. Somebody sees something, and you know, now where I'm located here in Winter Haven, right up the road, we used to have a lot of sightings in the Green Swamp area, but there's been far and few between, and I think it's because they've opened up a lot of more areas to hunting. And I think once these animals hear these guns go off, they just get the heck out of Dodge. There's been a couple areas over near, over where NASA's at, and there's a big, huge state forest up in that area where there is no hunting allowed. So that's another area that I wanted to go. I'm looking at, once I get healed up and stuff, I'm looking at going up there and checking out that area.
Gotcha. Yeah. What about the time of year? If you're out there in Florida, is there certain months of the year that you guys are seeing more activity or getting more reports?
Actually, they seem to come in. There doesn't really seem to be a time frame. They just kind of come in, you know. A truck driver will see one go across the street. Now, as far as us getting out there, you know, in the summertime, it's, you know, with the mosquito problem we have down here and the heat, it's kind of hard to get out there and actually go camping. I mean, I usually go out, we make it what they call a morning trip, where we'll go out super early in the morning, walk around the area, and then by the time the sun comes up, we go ahead and, you know, get back in the vehicle and turn the AC on, you know.
Right.
But usually around September is when we start planning our expeditions and start hitting the areas really hard.
Mm-hmm. Well, pretty much, I guess, year-round and whatnot. I mean, do you think there's a possibility that Sasquatch it migrates, or do you think they're in some of these areas just year-round?
I would say now again, I'm going to probably that's the third time I've said this is my theory, because I've always believed the animal is moves around, and one of the areas rivers I used to think was the Peace River here in Florida. But it seems that there are certain areas there I guess the animal does feel safe. Up in Torreya State Park, up in that area where there's no hunting, and on the Bridges property, again, no hunting allowed. I think, if these animals, and there's a food source for them and a water source, I think they'll, stay where they're at. But, like the Green Swamp, we used to get a lot of sightings out of there until, the state government opened up more hunting. And, all of a sudden, we don't hardly get any sightings out there anymore.
Interesting. Yeah, probably people going there. And, Sasquatch, skunk ape, or whatever you want to call it, packed up and left to another area.
Yeah.
Some of these areas in Florida, have you guys come across anything what's your thoughts on stick structures or bedding? Have you guys come across anything that you might associate or at least find strange you might associate with Sasquatch? In fact, I'm trying to think how long ago we found a structure, some branches that were all folded up into a weird-looking structure, and we were way out there, where there was no roads or anything, and of course we tried to look and see why would a human go to such a length to make something like this, whereas humans hunters just put up a doggone orange or yellow piece of rope on a tree to mark their hunting areas and stuff. This was we were just like and we tried to see if it, could have possibly been made, by nature. The branches fell down. But, the more we looked into it, it looked like something had made it. And the only reason we think that it was made, it was close to a creek, that maybe this animal made this structure in order to kind of guide it down to the creek. Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Out of I'm not sure how many reports you've taken in or people you've interviewed, but do you have any, whether it's in Florida or not, do you have any encounters or tales that kind of stick out in your mind that you could share? Well,
one of the ones actually was in the Green Swamp in 2012. In fact, the gentleman came in to see me where I worked, and it was in Thanksgiving morning. He was sitting on a tree stand. And he was sitting on his phone, he was playing on his phone, and he caught movement off to his left. And he looked up, and this is 6 o'clock in the morning, and he had a huge palmetto field in front of him. Anyway, he sees something come walking out. And at first he thought it was a guy in a ghillie suit. So he's kind of looking at it, and he's walking, and he notices that, this whatever thing is walking isn't carrying a gun or anything. And he's looking at him more and more, and it's actually coming a little bit closer to him. And he figures, it didn't quite look like a guy in a ghillie suit and stuff. Well, the thing stops in front of him, and he realizes, it might be, be a skunk ape. So he takes his phone and he starts filming it, and the thing turned around and looks right up at him. And he said a chill shot down his spine. He realized it wasn't a guy in a suit. It was a real animal. And he just the thing looked at him for, like I said, a couple seconds, and then all of a sudden it ran, and he stopped filming because he didn't know if the thing was going to run at him, which it ended up running in a whole different direction. But he stopped filming and put his hand on his gun because he thought the thing might be was going to start charging at him. Well, anyway, he got a hold of me. We ended up going out there. He showed me the tree stand, and I got up, my wife got in the tree stand, and I walked out, and he said, this is where it was standing. You could see where something had come running up through it. And then, of course, when we went to where it came out onto the mud road, it had rained, I don't know, maybe a day or two before it, and you could see the tracks, but they were all flooded. So as best as we could, we tried to get the water out, and I tried to get some prints, but unfortunately, I did get some prints, but they're not very good prints. And but you could see this thing, you know, with its you know, stride that it was running, and the way this gentleman was acting when I was interviewing, I really believe he had a real encounter with something. And it's just, and it was funny because he called over to his son and his dad immediately after it happened, and they came running over. His dad's like, "Oh my God, you know, you've actually got to see it." You know, he goes, "I've been out here for 30 years, and you actually get to see the darn thing," you know. So, and I mean, and he's never wanted to go on TV and get any publicity. Kind of, you know, he just said, "I'm not looking to, you know, and I don't need people telling me, you know, I imagined things or I didn't, you know, I know what I saw, and that, you know, that's all there is to it." So, and I believe the gentleman. I believe he had a real he had an encounter with an unknown primate type animal. And he said it had a very human-looking face when it looked up at him.
Those reports where people kind of remain on this and aren't looking for anything, I really pay attention to those reports. But did this guy seem to get a feeling for how, or did you get a feeling for how large this thing might have been, you know, based on maybe track measurement or just how he described it?
Well, when I went out there and I stood where it was, and my wife took a picture, and then we took a look at the film. Unfortunately, the film, all you can see is a figure standing out there because it's also foggy. And, of course, he used his cell phone, and you know, cell phones are not that, you know, back then, he didn't have a very high-grade cell phone. And I compared my size with eyes, and whatever it was, I would say was well over 7 foot tall.
Wow. That's big. And you described it having somewhat of a human-like face. Did you describe anything else like the hair color or
he said it was dark. Yeah, he said it was dark brown, and he said he could see the muscle pattern in the thing when it stopped, and he said it was what caught him is how graceful or how, you know, it moved through the palmettos, you know, because he said when, you know, a person or a human moves through it, we're kind of clumsy about doing it. You know, we're not very sure-footed, where this thing just kind of glided through, and it stopped, and he said it just started sniffing the air, and then he just sit there and, you know, he said, "Oh my God, is that a skunk ape?" And then I just turned around and looked right up at him, and he said, "Oh my God, you know, this is a real, you know." I think that, you know, that what shocked him was it was a real animal and not a guy in a suit. And I mean, the thing just, you know, it didn't look angry or anything. It just kind of looked at him, and then it just took off running.
That's a pretty fantastic report, and sounds like a very credible witness. I mean, is what he described pretty common, you think, for Florida, or I mean, is that a pretty common description?
Well, you know, it said it scared him pretty good. I mean, he said after it ran, he wanted to get somebody else out there. He said that's why he got on the phone and called his dad and his son to come out there, you know. Because, I mean, the thing is, he said it was just, you know, it did scare him to a certain extent. But, you know, and I mean, he was a little, he said, you know, his son said he was very emotional right after it happened. You know, and he said his dad just kind of, when they got home, his dad just kind of went to his room for a little bit, and just then it seemed like the next day he was really a little bit, like, I guess he had, you know, made some sense with it in his head. And, you know, and I've had some, you know, other people I've talked to, and my whole theory with that is when people see this thing, it's like we're going against, in our mind, the whole concept of there's no such thing as a boogeyman. And then we see something that we're taught that doesn't exist. All of a sudden we're seeing it. And that, you know, causes a great emotional response inside of our head. And I've noticed, like, when I've talked to some females who I believe have seen something, they get to a point where they actually start crying to me when they start relating the story.
Oh, I've had the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
It can be a very, I mean, you think about it. It's like seeing a space alien. You know, it's one thing having a vague, even as a Bigfooter, having a vague idea that they exist or or being reasonably assured that they existed and now not having seen one and then seeing one. It's, changes has a paradigm shift a little bit. So it's not surprising that, people that it affects people emotionally.
Well, going back to that incident I was telling you where those two gentlemen had the thing scream at them. And I mean, again, I'm talking, these two gentlemen I'm talking about were big, muscular guys who looked like they, were definitely not scared of anything. In fact, Josh was just one of the guys, up until then, had no problem going to the woods, had no problem sitting out there in the woods by himself. And he, just the look on his face when I came in that night and watched him talk about it. And Dean, the other guy, just sat in there on his lawn chair and didn't say a word. And he just said, I think I'm going to head home, guys. I didn't, So that just, to watch those two, that incident messed with them that much. I was just like, wow. For those two to get really shaken up the way they did, it just kind of, made me kind of think like, wow, what, because I mean, I have seen, yeah. And I think what happened was they, this animal just didn't want them where they were supposed to be.
Mm.
It was kind of a warning scream, like, get away from me thing.
Well, speaking of
that's pretty common. Yeah, when something screams.
Right. Yeah, well, I was going to say, it sounds, you get that a lot where people describe something screaming at them or seeing a Sasquatch yelling at them. I mean, those can be, almost like, these stories and these encounters. Robert, your opinion, of course, but do you think Sasquatch is aggressive? And have you heard of any reports where people described an aggressive Sasquatch or skunk ape?
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time?
Do you believe, and this is your opinion, obviously, of course, do you believe Sasquatch or skunk ape can be aggressive? And have you heard any reports of Sasquatch being aggressive?
Well, there's one story down here. It happened back in the 1800s where two gentlemen came down from Georgia into Florida, and they found some prints, and then they heard something screaming, and they had a Native American guide with them, and the Native American guide told them, hey, it's the wild man in the woods, and you got to watch it because they will do something to you if we. So the next morning they got up and left, and they went back up to their village, and they told some of the people, well, a band of people came. They got kind of a group of hunters, and they came back down into the area, and the way the story goes, that the animal, big hairy type humanoid animal, sprang from the woods and attacked some of them, and supposedly, the way the story goes, he pulled the head off a couple of the hunters, and they pretty much kind of, they shot it, and they shot it numerous times, and they end up, eventually killing it. But when they were trying to look at it and taking measurements, they heard some more screaming coming out in the woods and went, oh, crap, there's more of them. And they decided just to go ahead and get the heck out of Dodge and head on back up to Georgia. And this happened, back in the, late 1800s. But as far as modern stories go, I don't really have it. There was one where it supposedly stuck its arm into a truck driver. Again, going with my opinion, I've heard stories that, where they have been aggressive, but if you ever listen to the story, it's where they've been shot or, there's been some gunfire involved and stuff like that, that the animal actually just didn't, out of the blue become aggressive. Something instigated the animal to get it, it was shot at or, something, or somebody threw something at it and stuff. So, I believe for the most part these animals kind of try to keep to themselves. But, any animal that's, cornered or and shot at is going to become aggressive.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. The vast majority of reports out there that is really confrontational. Tries to avoid people for the most part, maybe curious at times, but it is the most aggressive nature is you'll rock or hit a tree. But most reports don't reflect a really aggressive creature. And you're right. I agree, Robert. That sometimes you get caught in the wrong place at the wrong time with any animal. A bear, cougar. or just be, in a bad scenario. I could see a Sasquatch possibly being a little more than just aggressive in a scenario like that. But those reports, you don't hear too many really aggressive reports. It seems that Sasquatch is pretty non-confrontational and avoids man as much as it can. Anyways, that's my opinion, of course. Are you, Robert? Are you out to prove the existence of, you talked about this earlier a little. You don't call yourself, you're a legend tripper. That's you're an investigator, I suppose. But if you had the opportunity to prove the existence of Sasquatch, would you? Is it something you're actively doing?
I'd like to prove that they're out there. To be honest, it's more for myself right now than it is anything else. And again, I go back to that Hunter story when he said, the way it just sounds like the way he just talks, it was like, I got to see something nobody else got to see, or hardly anybody ever does. And he kind of, and I kind of want that feeling. I want to, see something that nobody else has hardly seen. And, to confirm that, that they are there, and just see what it is exactly what these animals are. We believe it is a type of primate, and again, I think it is, but it'd be nice to really confirm what it is, or is this an offshoot of Homo sapiens that has taken a whole different direction, or is it a Gigantopithecus, or is it an entirely different kind of primate that that's not even on the books? Am I out for the fame and fortune of it? No, I don't really. Like I said, I go out there with cameras and stuff, and I put trail cameras in. But as of right now, like I said, I would just like to see it, just for a peace of mind for myself, and just say, yeah, it is out there.
Well, you not had a confirmation. So you had a sighting. What's the most significant thing that's happened to you? Obviously, you had a sighting. What's the most significant thing to you? And where do you lie with the skunk-ape Sasquatch? Are you 100% believer? Or are you a little bit skeptical that it exists? Where do you lie with that?
Yes, I do believe in it. Okay. In fact, I get people ask me that. Said, so do you believe in Bigfoot, UFOs, and all? And I guess bottom line, yeah, it is, because I go out and look for them. Do I believe there? I do believe there is a large primate-type creature that is roaming around parts of the United States, to include Florida, that, science hasn't quite put their finger on what it is. And I believe that there are, I have talked to people who I firmly believe saw something that was not a bear or was not a person in a suit. And, I had with Stacy Brown and his group a number of years ago, and we were up on an area, and I had, it's just me, Stacy, and David Lauer, and a young lady we had with us, and she had just done a scream. And we had it sounded like we had 1 million coyotes answered us back. Well, Stacy made a comment, hey, I hear something over there. So, well, I was holding a FLIR at the time, and I looked up, and I saw something, which, be honest, at the time I thought it was a poacher, because it was standing bipedal out in the middle of the palmetto field. Well, I immediately handed the FLIR over to Stacy. I said, hey, there's someone out there standing out there. Well, when I handed it to him, whatever it was took off running, and you could hear it moving through the brush. And by the time Stacy got out, it just pretty much cleared and got into the woods. But we went out there, and you could see what it was standing out there and stuff. And David, who's about 6 foot, stood out there. And then I went and stood back where I was holding the FLIR, and I could see whatever it was a lot taller than David. So, and that whole area that we were at had a history of skunk-ape sightings. So, for a while there, I was never a big firm believer in the whole call blasting, people screaming, up until that point where that young lady did that scream, and then we did have something. So I always tell, there's certain things I didn't believe in that I've taken back and I've reevaluated. So, I do believe that especially females, when they do a scream out there, it does, the big guy does seem to have something for the females out there, because we've had some, interaction going on whenever I've had a female do a scream. But, whatever it was out there, and I kept saying, if it was a human, he couldn't have made it out there without some kind of a light source, and we would have seen the light source for it coming out of there.
Yeah, a lot of people talk about, I've had this experience where we do get some sort of reaction possibly from Sasquatch or some result that I associate possibly with Sasquatch having a female around. I mean, something you really believe that recent females around?
Yeah, it does seem to be that way, and I've read some stories where they've been seen watching little kids, and there does seem to be more and more stories of them coming up, and like I said, out of experience, whenever I've had a female do a scream, something has happened that night. We've got either something come back, or we've heard something running in the woods in the back there. So, yeah, I mean, I do. I believe that these animals, maybe see the female as not a threat as a male doing a scream. Because like I said, for a long time at the beginning, I didn't really go for the whole screaming. I kind of had the whole concept. It's like you're walking up to a cat and saying meow. The cat looks at you funny, like, what the heck are you saying? I always thought that was pretty much the same thing, that we would make a scream out there, and the Bigfoot would out there would say, what are those humans trying to do, sound like us? But, whatever, I've had some females, and that night that young lady did that, and then lo and behold, I see something standing out there in the FLIR. So, I take that comment back. I do think there is something to do in the call blasting.
You obviously work with Stacy Brown, and Stacy Brown, of course, is pretty well known for the FLIR footage that his father and himself had gotten. Have you been to that area, and what are your thoughts on Stacy's FLIR footage? When I first met Stacy, that was one of the things I asked him to do. Would he take me down to the area where, him and his dad were when they saw it? And he's able to show you. He'll show you. Was able to show exactly what tree it was standing behind and the tree that stepped over. And again, me and my wife, we recreated it. And I looked like a little kid compared to what was actually standing back there. And talking to Stacy's dad, Stacy's dad is not one of those people, is a Bigfoot hunter in any sense of the word, and I don't even know if he's 100% sure about what it is he saw. But whatever it was, it did rattle him pretty good when he did see it in the FLIR. And unless he's got Stacy knows somebody that's 8 foot tall, that's extremely muscular, that has arms that kind of protrude down to his kneecaps. I think it's some pretty compelling evidence, and that whole area, like I said, has got a history of Bigfoot sightings in it. Yeah, it looks massive. If you look at the hands itself, I know people attacked the FLIR footage based on the hands, but the hands being large make a lot of sense. I mean, proportion-wise, and a lot of impressions that have been discovered there that really associated with Sasquatch, I mean, usually are pretty dang large. What are your thoughts? I mean, have you given thought to the size of the hand? Well, like I said, I mean, I believe the animal, these animals are obviously, being as large as they are, and I did make, my wife, in fact, made a note when we were watching the actual FLIR about the hands and stuff, because I've seen where people have put on costumes, and for some reason, you can't really see the hands all that well because, the hands are not that big. On a Bigfoot costume sort of thing, the hands are normal person's hands. Whereas in his FLIR video, you can clearly see the hands, and they are extremely large. Which again, looking at the area and where it was that he saw it, I mean,
if I was to fake a Bigfoot video, I wouldn't have done it, put it in there. I would have maybe gone to some area, where I've seen some of these things running in a field way far away. This thing actually was pretty darn close to him. It's just that the FLIR made it look like it was further away.
Yeah. No, yeah, it definitely, I got to meet Stacey Brown a few years ago when I came to Portland. And he described, the event, and he showed some extra video that wasn't, that I think was before they caught, honestly. And it really made a lot of sense to the whole story. It added a lot to it. But have you got any reports of free knocking or rocks being thrown into, at people? Have you had anything thrown at you, possibly?
Well, again, I'm going, no, I have never had anything thrown at me. Quick answer on that one. We were up at the Bridges house, and Mrs. Bridges, and again, this is not too far from Torreya Park, and I guess Mrs. Bridges and her husband, they were the people seen on that Finding Bigfoot episode, but we were up there, and she had invited us we stayed in the guest house, but she made some comment that these things have been coming around, and they've been seen to be hitting the side of the house. Well, anyway, woke me up at 3 o'clock in the morning in the house and said, something just hit the side of this house. So I got up, leaned up, and I looked outside the window, but I couldn't see anything. And then I walked into the bathroom, just looking at the bathroom window there, which was a little bit bigger. And, again, I didn't see anything. But the guy staying in the next guest room next, Emmett, kind of poked his head in and said, did you hear that? I said, what? He said, something hit the side of the house. And I said, I didn't, but my wife did. And it really, my wife, again, tries, for the most part, I'm not going to say a skeptic, but she's waiting to get that good, she wants to see it. And she's going to refine from comment. But it really, she had a hard time going back to sleep that night because she said it hit the wall, it hit right outside our bedroom window. And, she said that Ms. Bridges made some comments that, that the things seem to be coming around more, and, they've been laying stuff on the doorstep, and, items that people thought they had lost around her property have just magically been put down in front of their front door. And, it's like I said, it's just that one. Like I said, it's just kind of interesting. The whole. One story, just to throw this out there, we were on the property, and me, Emmett, and Glenn decided to set up a bogus camp, like we were camping out there. And Stacy and David were up on a hill on the other side with a tranquilizer gun, and we had another team on the opposite side. Well, Glenn saw something poking its head up. Glenn had a night vision. He saw something poking its head up in a dried-up a creek bed. And I couldn't see it with my FLIR. Well, next thing I know, we kind of stood up and we started stepping in it, and we heard something run off. And the other team heard it, and they started running after it. Well, it went up to the Bridges house, and then my wife texted me, and she said, hey, are you guys up around the cabin up here, which the Bridges have a cabin that's located about 500 feet down from their house. And I thought, yeah. I said, yeah, that's one of our teams up there. Well, that team came back down, and I said, hey, my wife heard you guys up by the cabin. And they go, we weren't by the cabin. We went a whole different direction. We went over by that trail that takes us in the whole – that's where we thought it went. I said, well, my wife heard something walking around outside the cabin. So we immediately all ran up to the cabin. I got on the radio and I said, hey, guys, my wife heard something up by the cabin. So we automatically ran up there and stuff. And she said she could hear it just walking around outside. And she thought it was one of our teams just kind of coming up there and just taking a breather.
Wow.
Yeah, I guess I guess whatever it is, I kind of likes my wife.
Well, there goes the female thing again, once again.
Yes, again.
Now, are you familiar? Several years ago, there was this photo that came out of what was labeled a skunk ape. It looks almost like an orangutan. Do you know the photo I'm talking about?
Yeah, those are called the Maika skunk ape photos. Yes, I do.
Yes, exactly. What are your thoughts on that? And I could be mistaken, but I've heard reports of that Florida does have a population of wild, either baboons or some sort of monkey?
Well, okay, real quick. We have there is a area up near Wauchula where people have taken their chimps and other animals, and they kind of like an old folks home for monkeys, so to speak.
Mm.
And there has been a couple of places where, during the hurricanes, that some of the animals did get out. But from what I understand, it was spider monkeys.
Gotcha.
Now, going back to the Maika skunk ape photo, the way, the whole story is that the Sarasota Police Department received this envelope with these two photos in a letter would appear to be an elderly lady saying that this animal has been coming into her backyard and that she left out some apples or some kind of fruit for it. And when she heard it, she went out there and took a couple photos. And she always referred to it, as an orangutan or something type creature. And it does bear a resemblance to it. But it also looks, a little somewhat different. But who's to say that this isn't an orangutan that hasn't gotten loose and just staying out in the swamps and stuff has just gotten all raggedy looking. The only problem is, the lady didn't leave her return address, so nobody actually knows exactly where it happened at. Some people, think it's a hoax. It was just done up for somebody, to make some money off it. I always call, to me, I always say the jury's still out because, Maika has a long history of wild man / skunk ape / Bigfoot sightings out in that area. It's Maika State Forest is a huge area out there where, anything can hide out there. I mean, it's possible. When I was living in Okeechobee, we had an incident where we had a spider monkey in our back, and we had to call Fish and Wildlife to come get it, but it took off before they showed up. So, I mean, as far as, the orangutans and stuff, I haven't heard. I mean, I have heard the animals did get out during Hurricane Andrew, and not all of them rounded up, but, it is possible. But Maika is quite a ways from, Miami and stuff.
Yeah.
As far as those photos go, I always tell everybody the jury's still out on that one.
Gotcha. No, I appreciate you. The best pieces of evidence for the existence of Sasquatch out there. I mean, we do have, the Patterson film is legit and fantastic. Is that something you look at as a pretty solid piece of evidence? Is there anything else that sticks out in your head as, that maybe that science should be looking at?
Well, I've always, my whole thing on the Patterson video or film is I think Roger and Bob got lucky. I think they got, I know they were on a Bigfoot hunt and on all that, and I think maybe the smell of the horses, distracted the animal, the Bigfoot, and I think they got lucky and they walked up on a female Bigfoot, drinking water, and she got up and walked away, and I think Roger got lucky and was able to get it on film. As far as other pieces, of evidence out there, again, this is just me. I feel Stacy's thermal video is a excellent piece of evidence. It's out there. The fact that those tracks that we found out there. I mean,
yeah.
I remember when we found them, I kept thinking, I wonder if it's out here. And then when we found the tracks, I went, holy crap, it is out here. And where we found the tracks were, again, if somebody's going to fake them, you don't put tracks in this location because you want somebody to find them. This was just an offshoot that we decided, that we broke into teams and just happened to go back there, and Stacy and David found these things. It's not like something he had walked, stumbled up on, oh, look, tracks. They went back into the thicket and they found those tracks. So... yeah. And just to look the size of those tracks, I was like, holy cow, that thing's really big.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it seems to me that there's, a lot of positive, plausible, possible evidence out there, whether it's tracks or video, hair, science should look at this a lot closer than they are as a whole? Or do you think truth investigators, enthusiasts need to do a better job, or both?
Well, again, I was talking to a fish and wildlife guy one time about it, because he saw the stuff on my vehicle, and he goes, "Oh, you go look for Bigfoot, huh?" I said, "Yeah, I do," and stuff. And I looked at him. I said, "I know you guys ain't allowed to kind of comment about it." He goes, No, we're not allowed to. And I said, "Do you guys get a lot of reports?" And he said, "Yeah, we get them from time to time." And I said, "Well, so how come you guys don't at least embrace it a little bit and say, well, I guess." He said, again, this was his opinion, because it wasn't really written down why they don't look into it, other than, there's really nothing out there. The sightings are very few and far between, and for them to come on there and say, yeah, we do have a large primate wandering around the Florida swamp, it's going to cause, not many people are going to want to go camping anymore. Plus, more people are going to have guns and start shooting at things that, they think might be a Bigfoot. So he said that, I guess until we get, some really hardcore, proof that's undeniable, we're not going to acknowledge there's anything out there.
Gotcha. And have you ever had any incidents where you've been or felt obstructed by any park or anything of that nature?
No, not really. I mean, one time I didn't realize I was trespassing on some land one time, and I was out there, and all of a sudden a vehicle came out of nowhere, and it was the game wardens, and they said, "Hey, what are you doing back here? This is, And I said, well, and at first I didn't really want to come clean what I was doing out there, and I said, well, I'm out here looking for something. And they go, "What are you looking for?" And I said, "Oh, crap." I said, "I'm out here looking for Bigfoot, all right?" And he goes, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, I'm out here looking for Bigfoot." He goes, "Well, have you ever seen it?" I said, "Well, no." And you guys kind of stopped me. I may have just, And he goes, "Well, all right, but, you're not supposed to be out here, And by the way, you ain't got no guns with you, do you?" I said, "No, all I'm carrying with me is bear mace." He said, "Well, you can't be back here. This is, So I said, "Okay, I'll turn around and I'll go back out, the way I came in. And I apologize. I didn't mean to trespass and stuff." But that's about the only time. But that was just trespassing.
Right.
But I've never had it where I felt the government was, stopping me from looking into anything.
I mean, that gets tossed around here and there. I personally never had any sort of obstruction. I've actually had help, minimal, but where that I have served test to that as well. At least not being obstructed in any way. And so I don't lean towards the conspiracy part of Bigfoot, where people believe that the government is totally aware of it and obstructs people from looking into it, or there's a cover up there. I mean, I don't rule out that there are certain factions in the government that may be aware of it. I don't find that to be nonsensical whatsoever. Just the obstruction part, I don't see it. I've never, everybody I work with has not had any sort of obstruction either. So, but Rob, what are your thoughts? What is it going to take to prove Sasquatch? I mean, do you think we need a body? Do you think we can prove the existence without a body?
Oh God, that one question. Now, do we think we got to go kill a Bigfoot? Well, I mean, or I should say, do we? I guess bottom line, to make everybody happy, I guess we're going to need some kind of a specimen. Do I believe we should go out and kill one? Well, that's, to each his own, but if I'm not going to go out and kill a Bigfoot, that's not what I want to do. I just want to see it. And, if we're lucky enough to come up on one that has died of, maybe it fell out of a tree or got hit by a vehicle or something, or, what Grover Krantz said one time, maybe a hunter thought it was something else and shot it by mistake. I believe that, our body will kind of set, that way scientists know what it is out there, and, we can properly identify it. But again, I'm not going to go out and kill a Bigfoot. And, to each his own. If they want to go out and kill one, that's up to them. But, when that friend of mine, or I should say that hunter, said that it had a very human-looking face, and I said, did you, grab your gun and point it at it and stuff? He goes, no. You know, he had no inkling on shooting at that thing because it ran away from him. You know, I mean, if they'd come charging at him, yelling and screaming, it may have been a different story. And then again, who am I to say? I mean, if the animal had come running, charging at me, I may shoot at it as well. But then again, I would have shot at a hog or a bear or anything coming at me. But I'm not going to, you know, I do hope down the road that they do get a hold of a specimen and it's not, you know, because my whole thing is, you know, if they do go out and shoot one, what if this is the alpha male of the group? You know, and it kind of destroys the rest of that group. But, you know, maybe we'll get lucky one of these days and we will find one that, you know, has, you know, along the side of the road, or one that has died, you know, of some kind of natural causes or something. And, you know, and then we can properly, you know, look at all these other scientists, say, aha, I told you they're out there.
Exactly.
Well, you mentioned when you were at the Bridges property, that somebody had a tranquilizer gun. Was the intent to use that if you ran across the Bigfoot?
Yeah, Stacy and David had one. In fact, yeah, they were looking at, you know, Stacy and David. They are looking to get some definitive proof. I mean, I'm not sure if they still have the tranquilizer guns, because the last time I've been out with them the last couple of times, I didn't see them with it. They just seemed to have them that one time. But yeah, that was a goal that night, was to draw one in and, you know, shoot it with a tranquilizer gun. In fact, I remember I was kind of, you know, scared to get up from where the camp was. I was scared to death Stacy was going to shoot me in the butt with one of those by mistake if I, you know, wandered in the woods to go to the bathroom or something. But, you know, that night, yeah.
Curious about what the protocol, and because there's always been discussion about how you would actually go, you know, determine that how much tranquilizer to use on an unknown species, because too much you can kill it, not enough you just piss it off. So.
Well, to be honest with you, I don't think I really asked him too much about. I mean, I saw them with the gun, and I did. Oh, that's a tranquilizer gun. But I never did ask them, hey, how much, you know, tranquilizer do you guys have in that stuff? I mean, I just remember when we got down to our little camp, I kept thinking, man, I don't want to wander around and have them shoot me by mistake, you know.
Right. No, I wouldn't want to be shot by mistake by a tranquilizer gun either. So, but I'm just curious, because that you don't hear about people actually going out with the intent to tranquilize one. I've heard discussions before of, you know, and it always comes down to, well, how would you know how much to use unless you consulted with somebody that is an expert in the subject. So, but
like I said,
fortunately and unfortunately, you didn't find out. Yeah. So, anyway, Rob, what a lot of in our area, a lot of the Bigfoot seem fairly vocal. If what we're hearing is Bigfoot. And we've had quite a bit of audio stuff that, you know, we've actually processed through using sonic equalizer, a spectrograph to look at it, so we can determine whether or not it's a known animal, you know, that it falls within known animal range, or if it basically gets separated into known and then interesting, because obviously unless you see a Bigfoot making an audio, you know, making a vocalization, you can't say, oh, well, that was Bigfoot. But to the Bigfoot in your research area, have you had much vocalizations and audio stuff?
Yeah, we've had some nights where we heard some whoops, and we've heard, you know, a couple screams a couple times. I mean, one night, in fact, it was at the Bridges house, we left out a video recorder. After we had done our investigation that night, one of the gentlemen left his recorder, and we just went back over to our base camp over at Torreya. And next morning he pulled it out, and you can hear something grunting. First you can hear some foxes, and then you can hear something grunting like it's walking around. And you know, it almost sounds something like, you know, like a gorilla. And when I was out, I heard something, and I'm always reminded of the Sierra calls, screams.
Yeah, Ron Moorhead's Sierra sounds. Yeah.
And I remember it wasn't exactly like that, but it reminded me of it. And I remember my son looking at me going, "What the heck made that sound? That didn't sound like no bear." So, I always kind of use that as my base, because I've always believed that the Sierra calls are definitely, in my opinion, sound like are of a Bigfoot. Again, that's my my feelings on that one. And the fact that me and my son heard something very similar that night when we were out, when I went to go retrieve a trail camera, and we saw he had night vision, and we saw some eyes looking at us, and we heard something wandering through, splashing around out in the swamps that night. But we've heard some whoops. In fact, when we were out in Mayakan a couple of weeks ago, when I was out with a couple of guys, we were walking the trails, we heard a couple whoops, like, something was out there, but it was keeping its distance from us. And I had my FLIR. I didn't see anything in the FLIR, and Glenn had his night vision, and we didn't see anything. But you could hear the whoo, whoo, and I mean, the hogs are pretty distinct out there. They're the, noise, and the bears kind of have a growl, and the panthers, have a, how would I describe a panther? Kind of almost like a low-lying lion growl is what a panther sound like. So, we've had some, we've heard some screams a couple times out there. When we were on Torreya State Park, we heard something screaming at us one night. And, again, it was after we had a female do a scream. In fact, I remember after she did it, we were listening, didn't hear anything, and we were just starting to get up, and I remember reaching for my backpack, and all of a sudden we heard a scream come to our left, and went, sounds like the thing's standing right over there, So, yeah, we do get some vocalizations out here. We've also, we're starting to look at maybe the theory that these animals can also imitate other animals, like coyotes and owls, because we've heard some, owl noises, and it didn't quite sound like an owl. But then again, I'm no expert on that, and maybe it was in fact an owl. But we've heard some stories where they can imitate other animals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you believe there's any sort of symbiotic relationship between like Sasquatch and coyotes? I mean, have you had reports where there have been Sasquatch and coyotes in the area, or vice versa, or anything of that nature?
Well, bottom line, we have coyotes all over this place. So, I mean, as far as any tie-ins, I can't, I can't see it. I mean, I always look at the fact that, why is it Bigfoot in the area? What's it trying to eat? And, one of the source of foods we have here besides the deer is the hogs. But up there, in fact, where the Bridges live, there isn't any hogs up in that area. I don't know why, but there isn't any in there. But there is a lot of deer. Mm. So I think the animal, along with, eating some of the berries and stuff around the area, which we do have a large amount of berries, edible berries for these animals to live on, I do believe it does eat off of, deer and possibly, some of the, fish and turtles and other animals up in our area, or down in our area, I should say.
Have you guys come across?
I'd like to see a Sasquatch trying to eat an alligator.
Well, I don't know if you guys know, the only thing about an alligator that you can actually eat is its tail.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's possible. I mean, it may go after the smaller gators. I have not heard any reports where they've been seen walking around with a gator under its arm, but I have read some reports where it had a dog under its arm and stuff, but not a gator.
I've heard that too. Yeah, that'd be something else though.
Well, I mean, it is a source of food. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I love eating gator tail.
Right. Well, there you go. Tastes like chicken.
Yes, it does actually.
Shane, I'm sorry I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. No, I was going to ask Robert if he's come across, speaking of deer and whatnot and sources of food. I mean, have you come across any strange kills? Sometimes you hear reports of deer with their necks twisted or certain body parts missing. Have you come across anything like that in the woods?
Well, back when I started getting into it, came up and I did some, trips up in the green swamp. We did find, we did have one of the ranchers tell us that he had come up and was missing some cows, and we did find, the bones of one of the cows. But, are we 100% sure that a poacher didn't come in here and, kill it and stuff? But it just seems that, the hunter, the rancher was pretty sure, it wasn't a poacher that, took the cows. And, when we found it, it was scattered all over the place. But again, we didn't find any tracks or anything around that area because it was really hard and it had a lot of palmettos and crap laying on the ground that would prevent any tracks from being made.
Gotcha. When it comes to research, what are some of the techniques you guys utilize in the field? I mean, do you guys have sort of protocol, or do you personally? I mean, do you do the same sort of investigation and research in the field every time, or do you guys experiment?
Well, we've tried different things. I mean, one night we set up an area where we had a tape of a baby crying. I remember David doing that one night. I mean, the way I like to do when I go out, I'd like to hit the area and, depending on what time I get there, if I get there at night, I just kind of set up my base camp and we stay there at night and we just kind of, next morning we get up and walk around. We look for evidence, tree branches, and we look for tracks and we look for, areas where it might, and then, of course, I look for some areas where I can, potentially set up some trail cams, but we've had, to be honest, we've had negative luck on the trail cams. But, and then that night, we break into teams and we hit up different areas. And sometimes we'll go out to an area and we'll just sit there and just kind of listen and wait a couple hours, see if anything happens. A couple at times we hit an area where we just follow a trail and then until it leads back to camp. And, of course, if we get anything or we hear anything, we stop what we're doing, we stay there, and we just listen and, get the night vision out, get the FLIRs out, and start scanning the area and in the hopes of, something poking its head up. And, next morning, we go back, we do a review, we talk about what we've seen, and then we'll hit that area. If, we have anybody that happen to hear anything, we'll go hit up that area and go look around in the daytime to see if we, can find any tracks or anything of that area. Again, I haven't had any luck with the trail cams, and I'm starting to believe that some people saying that they can somehow sense that they're out there. How, I don't know. I mean, I've always believed that these animals' senses are very acute, because it can see very well at night and it smell, and maybe it's hearing it. It can somehow pick up on something that these trail cameras are putting off, or it could just smell the human smell on the trail cams.
That's what I was going to ask you. What kind of steps do you take to get rid of the human smell when you place up trail cams? Do you do anything? I mean, wipe them down or?
Mm-hmm. Well, I got that stuff I bought over at Bass Pro Shop. After I put it the trail cam up, I put this camouflage, Army camouflage stuff that I got to wrap it around it, and then I spray it down, and I also kind of put a whole bunch of Spanish moss all over it too, because that gives off a good smell. And then I just leave it out there for a couple months. I figured I also hope that after it's sitting out there, that it's sitting out there, it's going to lose some of its the scent out there as well.
Yeah, I think that's true. It is interesting because not known animals, when we get them on trail cams, will show interest in trail cams, like notice that they're there. So it makes sense that, of course, those will get captured on trail cam. So it's interesting that I think we're talking about something much smarter than your average animal in the woods, and why they manage to rarely get captured on trail cam. It's just a big mystery up in the air. We don't know. Just like pretty much everything else about this subject.
Yeah, well, I've always told people, too, when you're asking me about when you're looking for that, I said you can't go out looking for Bigfoot and with the same mentality you're looking for a bear or any other animal. These animals are extremely smart. They know what's going on. They know they have they know to stay away from humans. So, you may get lucky if these things make a mistake and give themselves away. But don't go out there and assume that they're just going to sitting out there waiting for you to come see them, because they're extremely smart. And, you have to, treat it like you're dealing with a smart animal.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, it's great advice. I mean, it's entirely true. Not dealing with a bear, a cougar, a deer, or another, nature. I mean, something that's what it does, and it's managed to stay elusive. Yeah, you got to go out with a completely different mentality. But Robert, we're kind of getting close to the end of the show here. But we'd like to talk a little bit about your book, Legend Tripping, and how did you come about? Ideas that stem from. Describe your book a little bit.
The way I got the idea for it, like I said, I was calling myself me and the wife Legend Trippers and stuff. And Charlie Carlson, an author who wrote the book Weird Florida, invited me to come out to a couple of his presentations and talk about it. And I had one gentleman come up to me at the end, and he said, I noticed how you your family gets involved and you go out there camping. I said, well, I've been trying to get my son to come out camping with me because he just wants to look at video games and all that other crap. I said, well, next time you want to go out camping with your son, don't sit there and say, hey, son, let's go camping. He said, son, let's go on a Bigfoot hunt. And long story short, he wrote me back and said, hey, it works. We go out camping. During the daytime we go fishing. At night we go out looking for Bigfoot. And then I told Charlie about it. He said, Rob, you need to probably put all this stuff that you do and talk about on paper. So I did it, and I don't know. I didn't know really the concept of how I was going to do it. And then my publisher, David Hatcher Childress, he's one of the hosts on that TV show Ancient Aliens. Yeah. He kind of said, Rob, you need to make it a guidebook. Bottom line, a guidebook, because people want to know how to go out and look for this stuff. So, I started doing the whole Bigfoot thing, and I started putting some feelers. I started talking to other Bigfoot hunters. I said, here's what I got. Would you guys take a look at it, see some of the stuff I have, any ideas, you please throw them in there, because I'm not going to come off like I try to come off like an expert, because I'm not. And I don't want to, and I want to take other ideas from other Bigfoot hunters and stuff. And my wife did the same thing with the paranormal. She put the feeler out there and showed what we wrote to other people. And then we did the whole thing about UFOs and all that stuff. And I actually like the whole concept of UFO landings and stuff. But I also, when I got into doing the book, it just started getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And lo and behold, it came out, and I got lucky with the publisher I had, who was really supportive, and I got a really good editor who really helped put the book in and I always give Lyle Blackburn credit for this, because he said your book has to have a direction, because if you go off in left field and right field, people are going to put your book down. It has to have a direction, and that's one thing I always love about my editor. She kept the book on a direction, and I tell you, I was really, really pleased with how the book came out. I always tell the wife I can die a happy man now that I have the book. The book came out the way I wanted it to, And I got a lot of support from a lot of outside agencies. Ripley's, believe it or not, let me put some pictures in there for free. The Roswell Museum let me use some stuff, and I talked to Matt Moneymaker. He let me put some stuff about Biffro in there and all that stuff. And I sat down with Cliff Bereckman, and I was talking to him about some stuff, and we were talking about footprints. And I even put a direct comment, which he let me put in there, that, tracks are not a representation of a foot, but the damage that a foot does to the ground.
Yeah.
And
Cliff say that many times, yes.
And I when he told me that, I just said, Cliff, can I please put that in my book? He goes, go for it. You know, I said, I'll put, and in fact, I even put, you know, that Cliff made the comment. You know, I give full credit to him for saying that. And, you know, like I said, the book's been doing really well. Actually, I found out it was doing good in Europe, and for some reason it was doing good in Australia. So, and my publisher hit me up on doing another one. So I was out doing research on the skunk ape, but unfortunately I got hurt. So I gotta do some healing real quick and before I can get back out there again. But I've got a hold of some more sightings and stuff. I got to go look into. I got one where a gentleman was setting up a fishing tournament, and he had one come running out of the woods at him and stuff. I'm gonna go interview him and stuff, and you know, it just I was really surprised how much stuff is going on down here in Florida about the Bigfoot. There was a lady by the name of Ramona Clark Hibner, who actually started the whole research here in Florida back in the 50s. In fact, she would not call it the skunk ape. She referred to it as a Yeti. But she was lived up in Brooksville, and I'm trying to find out what happened to all her research material, because Lauren Coleman told me she had a whole bunch of material and a whole bunch of sightings and stuff that never got released out to the public.
Wow. Treasure trove. If discovered treasure trove, that would be, Robert. But your book, I mean, does your book, it's more of an instructional book. Does it focus on Florida? How does that work? I'm looking forward to reading it. I need to get my hands on a copy. But how does your book flow? And what kind of, is this a book for everybody? I mean, men, women, children?
Yes, in fact, I can say if you're 10 and above, you can read my book. Is it based out of Florida? No. In fact, I made sure that the section on Bigfoot, I covered everything from the West Coast Bigfoot, I call it, over to the Bigfoot, or to the Fouke Monster, to the, Bigfoot seen up in the New York area, all the way down to Florida. I made sure it was a pretty generic, and I talk about, when you're, I take basically about what you need to take out there and to be aware of, some of the areas and some of the hazards, like on the West Coast up in Oregon and stuff, it's a lot colder than it is in Florida, so you definitely need to make sure you have snivel gear. And, it's a lot more hilly and stuff than it is down here in Florida. Of course, here in Florida, we have to watch out for the swamps and all that stuff. And, I just try to, give people just things to think about when they're out there. And, I mean, I've been out on one expedition where I had these, I call them California boys, but I'm not even really sure they're from California. But they didn't bring anything out with them on this Bigfoot hunt. They were going to rough it. They wanted to do like Survivor Man and just rough it. And I remember them trying to start a fire. They had all these big logs with a Bic lighter. And I was sitting there I walked up on them. I said, what are you guys doing? They go, dude, we're starting a fire, man. And I said, oh, okay. So I just sat there and watched for a couple minutes. And then the guy goes, dude, this is not going to light. And I said, well, you guys are doing it wrong. And I said, here, let me show you. And I did the whole thing with the little twigs and, and all that. And, and I got a fire going, and they're just sitting there looking at me well, going. And I said, dude, you're like a fire god, man. And I said, well, I said, no, not really. And then I took them out that night, and in Florida, all the trails are marked with these little orange squares on the trees. I'm not sure how they are over there in Oregon and Washington State. But you can, when you're in the woods, you can look up and just see those little squares, and you know which way you're going. Well, for some reason, they thought I was a living compass. They said, dude, how do you know where you're going, man? We're lost. And I said, should I tell them or should I let them believe that I'm some Daniel Boone kind of guy? And needless to say, I came clean and I just pointed. I said, see up there, gentlemen, those orange squares? That shows the trail. But the funny part was when we got up into this field, I had the light. I heard something, I hit the light, and there were all these deer out in this field, but all you could see were their eyes glowing. And I looked at these guys, and I said, freeze! And I mean, you should have seen these guys. They all like stopped right in mid-step, and they, and they saw the glowing eyes, and they're like, dude, there's like a bunch of Bigfoot out there. And I looked at them and said, how fast can you guys run? And they're like, crap. And I said, relax, guys, it's just deer. And I said, oh, dude, this is like, I thought there was like 20 Bigfoot out there, you know. I said, you know, we couldn't get that lucky if we wanted to, you know. But that got me thinking, you know, about stuff to bring out there. And I went over a little section on, you know, outdoor survival, which, you know, again, I'm going to say I'm not an outdoor survival expert, but I do have a friend that is. And I sat down with him and I went over some stuff that to make sure, you know, you're prepared when you go out there. And, you know, I came up with some lists of stuff that to go. And I also say, you know, if you're doing this for the first time, do not go out and buy all this fancy gear until you know that this is something you enjoy doing. Because I've seen a lot of people get into the ghost hunting thing and they buy all this expensive electronic equipment, go out one night and out see a ghost and say, why did I buy all this stuff? I don't know. I'm not going to do this again. So, you know, I stress, you know, make sure it's something you enjoy doing. Yeah.
I went out looking for Bigfoot and I didn't find him the day, so I proved he doesn't exist.
Well, I also say that in my book too. I said it's a 99% chance you're not going to see anything, but there's that 1% chance that you're not going to get it unless you get out there and go look. You know, so you know, like I said, you're dealing with a smart animal, and most of you are going to hope to get out there and look, and just hope to God that it makes a mistake and comes walking across a road or goes through a trash can or just happens to just come out of is out hunting looking for something, and you just happen to walk over there and you're upwind from it so it doesn't smell you. But you're not going to get that experience unless you get out there and go look.
That's exactly right. Well, Robert, I want to thank you for joining us today. Legend Tripper Robinson has been our guest today here on Monster X Radio, and that's a mouthful. We appreciate you joining us, and we look forward to having you back on the show again in the future. Let us know what you're up to.
Well, again, thank you for having me on. I had a great time. I had some awesome questions and stuff. I really had a good time on it.
All right. Well, thank you again. And for my good friend, co-host Shane Hardcore Corson, this is Gunnar Monson. We'll be back again next week with another episode of Monster X Radio. Until then, go to www.Squatch Coffee and get you some. And enjoy some past episodes. You can go to Blog Talk and look up our channel, and all our archive of past shows are there. So, again, until next week, keep it squatchy.
Napa pura calidad.
Dale más vida a tu carro con Napa. Aceite convencional para motor Pensoil por solo $3.49 el cuarto. Además ahorras $10 por par, llevándote los limpiaparabrisas Bosch Evolution Beam. Lógralo con Napa. Pura calidad.
Oferta válida hasta el 28 de febrero. Precio general en los diferentes estados. El precio no incluye impuestos aplicables ni cargos por reciclaje. Ver tienda para detalles.
Napa pura calidad.